Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
Hello.
Now there's some seismic things are happening.
Some pretty huge things.
That's
what seismic means, isn't it?
I do believe it is. Earth-shattering things. Now it seems as if Take-Two are in the process of being bought out by Sony, or at least that's the go-to thing. Now this started unfolding yesterday, but and if you've been keeping up with it, you know that there's already some rumblings as to how true or true it may not be. Josh has all the facts, so tell me things.
It's been a really big web to try and untangle, to be honest, because obviously this broke last night with the rumour that it was a quote from MarketWatch, who did a report on how the stock market is going after, the impacts of Brexit and stuff like that. And then tucked away towards the end was a little quote that Sony, and I quote, is in advanced board level discussion to acquire Take-Two Interactive in a mostly cash deal that would value the company at $130 a share. Okay. So then I lost my mind and I thought, oh my God, Sony are in these advanced talks to get Take-Two, who obviously own Rockstar and have all this IP like Grand Theft Auto, Red Dead Redemption, Borderlands, Bioshock, the 2K sports games. Yeah, it was like a subsidiary of Take-Two, so it would be the whole thing.
Yes.
But there has since been some water splashed in this.
Well, that was the thing. So this is watching it all unfold, because Josh messaged me. He's like, we should do this thing. It's a huge, big thing. And I was like, well, I don't know how true it all is, because the initial follow-up on GameIndustry.biz's write-up was that they got back in touch with the dude who provided that quote.
Joel
Kalina. And he was like, oh, I didn't actually say that, or at least he was like, I'm surprised there's been so much attention based on it, because I didn't put that forward. But then following it up, the shareholders or the stock prices have changed, or the percentages have changed, which indicates that it is still in motion. It does seem like it's happening.
Well, the confusion seems to stem from that MarketWatch cited this Joel Kalina as sort of like the sole source who the rumor originated from, whereas he's kind of clarified and just been like, it's just market chatter that I heard that I was passing on. No, there is no one source that anyone can find for it. It's just sort of bubbled up around, which is why it's sort of kind of still up in the air, because it is there. People were talking about it, but no one knows where it came from or how it's even started.
Let's just, for the sake of the video and for the sake of catching it at this stage, because we assume that it will be going, we assume at this stage it's potentially going forward. I think it's worth talking about the wider ramifications of it, because Take-Two, if you drill down on what they own or who they own, the main two, or the only two, are Rockstar and 2K. Yeah. So that's, like you said, it's GTA, it's Red Dead, it's Borderlands, it's all these massive franchises. And for me, my initial thoughts were those companies would never just want to side with one console, because that, obviously they're cutting off Microsoft, potentially Nintendo, whatever it is. But if you sort of go take a step back and look at the way the industry is going overall towards the next generation, we're moving so much into full streaming services. We've seen experimentation with PlayStation Now, with Game Pass. Microsoft are poised to do their diskless Xbox. You've got xCloud, streaming games in going forward. And so for me, I started thinking, well, it seems like the future of the industry is turning these different brands into apps, into Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, whatever. And so Sony are going to want to bolster their app same way that Netflix buy Friends or whatever, some sort of massive thing to get you on board. So with all that in mind, it makes perfect sense.
I know, yeah, exactly. We've had loads of reports of how Xbox Live might be coming to Nintendo. Those guys are getting buddy-buddy with each other. So there's no sort of reason to assume that if this deal was to go ahead, that suddenly all these games would be exclusive to PlayStation, because while that would be great for the PlayStation brand, it might have a negative impact on the industry at large. It's not unprecedented. When Microsoft bought Mojang for Minecraft, there was a worry that, oh my God, is it now going to be exclusive to this one platform? And then obviously they kept continuing to support it for every single one under the sun, fridges, phones, tablets, anything that game can run. I think I can put it
on that wall over there.
Probably.
That's the thing though, because you think of I always love the word optics in business. How does it look to the public? I do. I love the word optics. And if you think about that, obviously when Microsoft bought Mojang, and you kind of thought, well, okay, if they want to do the cold hard business reality, then all they do is they cut Minecraft off everything else, and they go, hey, you want to play Minecraft? Buy an Xbox One. And they could have gone down that route. I think someone like an EA would have done that, or something like that. And obviously Microsoft have just bought Obsidian and In Exile, but they still had the Outer Worlds RPG in motion, and they're still going to honor that. They're still going to make it so the Outer Worlds releases on PS4 and stuff. But going forward, exclusivity assumedly will be a much bigger deal. Yes, which is something that we're kind of seeing, or we have seen flirted with this generation quite a bit, cross-platform play and all that kind of stuff. But for me, I always used to love exclusivity growing up. I remember when Final Fantasy left PlayStation, I was like, what the hell? Because I like my console to have my specific things. What's your general thoughts on that stuff?
Well, I'm kind of conflicted, because obviously a huge exclusivity deal like this would be great for Sony, but probably not great for the industry at large. You don't want to have to buy a PlayStation console to play Grand Theft Auto 6 or whatever. But I think obviously...
Oh God, GTA being exclusive.
That's huge.
It is a bit big.
But yeah, you need a balance between it. I think going forward, we are going to see these platforms open up, but they still need those big hitters. The reason Sony's done so well this console generation is because they've had these great games like Horizon or God of War, Spider-Man, these huge names tied to their console specifically, but they are an anomaly at the moment. Like you said, Microsoft are really opening themselves up, and even before they got into bed with like Nintendo and are looking to put their services on other platforms, even back then their value of exclusives was less because they were still putting them on PC, which Sony has started to do with second party stuff. But I think I don't know where I really fall in it, because I think we are in two divergent paths that the consoles seem to be opening themselves up. Even Nintendo licensed out Mario to Ubisoft, for Rabbids. So I don't know where we're going.
It's weird. Speaking of Nintendo, though, it's like if this is the way that the industry is going, where like you think of the less consoles, they're more brands. It devalues the very it potentially devalues the nature of the hardware, because you could just stream stuff in depending on where you are. PlayStation or Sony experimented with that with the PlayStation TV. It's like you get a little set-top box, you have a DualShock, you can connect it to that. But Nintendo seem to be the ones that they're off on their own little island doing their own thing. Like they don't necessarily care about amassing like a body of titles from like third-party stuff, because they have the Marios, the Zeldas, and all that kind of stuff. But when you mentioned Spidey, that made me think that like Sony have already got a major, like Spider-Man, you would assume would be everywhere, but they already kind of have that on their on their platform. But the Marvel game, the Avengers game, that'll be everywhere. It's just weird seeing the things like slot into place. But in terms of like this sort of thing, like I said, like the optics of it going forward with it. Yeah, I guess.
I don't know. I mean, like you look back in history when Grand Theft Auto was obviously like sort of so linked to the original PlayStation, like PlayStation 2, but that's a huge name now. It's like the biggest game in the world that makes so much money.
Entertainment product in history.
Yeah,
like, I
think the worry might be for Sony that they are going to get left behind. Everyone else has kind of publicly announced their plans for the next generation. Microsoft are buying all these studios. They're getting the infrastructure there. They've got these weird consoles that are all digital and stuff. And then, lest we forget, Google are about to come in with their console.
Have you seen the controller, though? Oh, what is that? It's another Ouya thing. It's like I'm not playing with this weird soap thing.
Look, we're all writing it off. I've been writing it off for so long, but Google have the resources to just absolutely splash out and buy stuff up left and right and make themselves this kind of market leader. So if I was Sony, I'd be worried because they don't have the same amount of resources as like Microsoft. Microsoft have like unlimited money, more or less. They can spend 2.5 billion on Mojang and then just be like, well, there you go.
We want an exclusive. People can share it.
Yeah, exactly. But I think Sony could do with an acquisition, maybe if it's not Take-Two, some big names to get under their belt, just to plan for the future, because the competition is going to get really tight, not only from Microsoft, but like I said, we are writing Google off, but you should never write Google off.
I think on the that's like maybe a potential side thing, but I think on the Google side, especially if we talk exclusivity, I think the play that Google has is that they kind of want to take all those little like smaller like mobile style experiences, because we've seen you can play a bunch of games in the Google Chrome extension. I forget like if there's anything that's majorly like head turning, but I think there's some stuff you can get in there. I think the Google console would play into that and would give you like mobile stuff, and I mean I don't even know if there's any mobile exclusive franchises that matter whatsoever. Clash of Clans, stuff like that. I think that would be the direction that they would go, but I think the overall way that the industry is moving is into this idea of apps and streaming and all that kind of stuff. But I just wonder how that affects the console side of it. Because Sony have said that they think the next generation is the last one. They said they think there's a need for one more generation of technology. So whatever this is the final pivot.
Oh, it's both terrifying and exciting to be a part of, because I mean, like we have been around with general console cycles for so long. The idea of a generation beginning and ending, and then you get new tech to sort of have this nebulous kind of iterative thing that's going further down the digital path is kind of spooky. I haven't tried yet with the because you can use your phone to tether it to the PS4 and like play that way.
Yeah. I, for the most part, hate I hate touch controls on a phone. Right. Yeah. I don't know if you've tried any like big budget experience on a phone, but it was like, it's bad. When it was like Rockstar, like, now you can play GTA 3 on your phone. I'm like, why would I ever want to do that? Like, the shoulder buttons are at the top of the screen. It's the worst thing in the world. So like, if that's their idea, like, or at least it is on the Microsoft side, like, you can access the xCloud tech wherever you are. Yeah. Like, I still think you need a little bit more to it infrastructurally to make this stuff stuff work. All of this is outside of the fact that if this is all true, then Sony would own Borderlands, Bioshock, GTA,
which is
some massive franchises.
Which is crazy. I mean, it makes sense. Again, I keep going back to it. It makes sense for them to make those games exclusive, but you will annoy so many people in doing so.
I can't see, like I said, initially my reaction to this is I can't see the business reality of them. Like, I can't see it unless it's a hostile takeover, like what Vivendi tried to do to Ubisoft.
Right.
I can't see Take-Two willingly going alongside with Sony, because then they just can't put their stuff on Microsoft and Nintendo.
This is the thing that I was saying to you before we came in. I've tried to research as best I can, but to be honest, I'm not great on like stocks or business or anything like that. But from what I can gather, like Take-Two's a publicly traded sort of company, and I think their CEO owns 51% of the sort of shares.
Okay.
So like it's not sort of like, I don't know, you wouldn't have to convince all the shareholders.
One dude.
You potentially just have to convince one dude who wants to like get out and make a load of money, and then like Sony can come in and do it. It's not necessarily a hostile takeover because they're not doing the kind of same thing Vivendi did, but it's sort of that similar thing where you don't have to sort of convince a company as sort of a singular thing.
It's one dude who's already minted beyond belief. Yeah. And you just go, do you want to can you just sign off on this one thing?
Yeah, sure.
Here's some chicken wing, have a nice time, sign off on this thing. Then maybe, I think at this stage, obviously everything is up in the air, but I'm kind of fascinated to see how it goes. I think the state that we're in as the generation rolls to a close is, because I didn't think there was anywhere else left to go kind of thing. But again, I was like saying too, it reminds me of the end of like Ghost in the Shell, the old one, not the new one, where the character just becomes full data. Like video games, the industry, the console side of it, everything is just data. You just access it wherever you want, and there's no permanence whatsoever anywhere. It's both good and bad. I don't know. It's a living hell.
I know. But it's like when we last year we heard about Microsoft potentially buying EA. We all lost our mind. This is sort of on that same magnitude, only that like the IP that Take-Two owns is probably more profitable. Not even then, they've got like making billions on FIFA, so it's about the same level of ridiculousness.
I think if this is the way that they're going, especially if you take a wider stance to the way that a lot of like general entertainment companies or companies in general operate around the world, that you do have that conglomerate approach to stuff. Like if you drill it down, there's like 5 companies that own everything if you go back enough steps, and it's like, well, maybe the industry's just going to turn into that.
I still, part of me does not want to believe that Disney are actually buying Fox. I remember when that first started, I was like, no, come on, that's never going to happen.
It's literally the cyberpunk future.
No, it's
which again is
we're in it.
Both good and bad.
It's all data. That's all we're in.
But let us know what you think down in the comments below. Do you see Sony owning something as massive as Grand Theft Auto, or is that just too ridiculous to ever happen? Either way, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
I'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye. Bye.